Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm Olga, and my guest today is Jim Hussey. I've known Jim for a long, long time. I worked back then it was Adams Hussey before it became Chapman Cubine Allen Hussey firm. And Jim has been there for over 30 years. So Jim, please introduce yourself.
Hey, and I think you did a pretty good job there. I've been a part of the firm. As you said, it's had a lot of different names over the past 31 years since I joined. I've served I've served most of that time as president and then as chair of the organization once Kim Cubine stepped in. I guess about 12 years ago as the CEO and president. And I just recently stepped down after 31 years, just decided it was time to try some new things in the later part of my career. And so I guess that's the brief summary.
So we'll get to next steps in your career momentarily. But first thing I've been wanting to ask you, so 31 years at the firm, things have changed. I personally remember the days when we all said, hey, what if we asked for money in an email? And lo and behold, people were willing to contribute money via donation links. So it's a long time. So what are the big trends that you have observed? What are some things that have changed since you first entered that field?
Oh, so much has changed. I mean, you mentioned email. I mean, when I joined the firm in 91, we didn't have the internet. And my career started back in 1986 when fax machines were just starting. So much has changed. Obviously the addition of digital to the mix has been the biggest change. And it's just the fact that it's never been a one channel market. During my, 37, 38 years in the business, we had telemarketing back then, in addition to direct mail. But the fact that it's become so diverse and that it really is a multi-channel world now, and that we have so many different avenues to communicate. So, I mean, those are the big picture things. The small picture things, we had a farewell party for me at the firm on Tuesday night. We were just talking about just the everyday things have changed. I mean, we used to have mag tapes hanging all around the office. And for the younger people, those were those big circular tapes that they used to have to run on machines to be able to download all the data. And they just basically filled every office and every corner of a place. And now all that's just digital. And so much has changed. It really has. But the fact that digital is coming into the mix, and it's far more complicated today than it was 31 years ago. It's far more simple. Everything from putting together a budget and that type of thing today is far more complex.
So you were at the firm for over 30 years.
Right.
And while not everyone stays for quite that long, the firm definitely has a culture of longevity. There are some people that while I was there 15 years ago, some of the folks that were there are still there. So I wanted to ask you, what do you attribute that kind of track record of retention?
I mean, that's a good question. The one thing is we only work on causes that we agree with, and I'm still talking as if I'm still with the firm because it's always going to be a part of me. I always view it as my baby, but CCAH only works on progressive causes and great charitable causes and political causes that CCAH believes in. And so I think that motivation keeps a lot of people there. I mean, direct marketing is a very stressful business. No matter whether you're working on the client side or on the consulting side, there's so many deadlines. As I said earlier, it's gotten very complicated. So it's not a simple job. So we've also, I think, over the decades have tried to make it as, I'm not going to say stress-free. There's no way to do this without stress. but to try to alleviate the stress as much as possible. We've tried to keep it fun. We've tried to give an exceptional amount of vacation time and personal time off. The firm has had sabbaticals for people who stay for a long period. The firm also offers just personal days off and lots of different things. So the firm has always offered more time off than I would say most businesses offer because of the stress. And also, I just think people just love working together. I've been very fortunate. A lot of the partners I worked with and people in other positions have been with the firm over 20, 25 years. Lon Chapman and Chapman Cubine and I've been working together in one capacity or another for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of other people in the firm, Pete Carter, for example. And I don't even want to say any more names because I'll forget somebody. But, Susie, Susie Carlo, she started as an intern at the firm, straight out of college. We worked together for over 3 decades, and she rose all the way from an intern to a partner within the organization. And that's something that CCAH has always tried to do, to be able to lift people up within and keep them happy.
So we talked about all the things that have changed, but I want to ask you a different question. In fundraising realm, direct response or otherwise, what are the big trends that you're observing now in your work?
The big trends, obviously everything's got to be multi-channel, which is one of the reasons we had our acquisition and merger with Mission Wired, because it's not either or. If you're specializing in just direct mail, or if you're just specializing in just digital, you're really limiting your future within the industry, because it's not either or. You have to have all of these elements, and if you don't, it's not a complete program. And so that's obvious. The other trend is, there's this. I've been doing this almost 40 years, and there's always been this trend that direct mail's dying, and that's not the future. And I've been hearing this since day one. Back my first day at work was like March 1st, 1986. And I remember people talking that first week about, we're not going to have a job for very long because, we now have these fax machines. So I remember one person speculating that post offices would be where you would go to fax a letter to somebody, and then you'd have to go to the post office to get the fax. And I mean, I've heard this stuff ever since. One of our competitors back in the 90s did a speech about direct mail is dead, and we decided to good-naturedly push back, and so we put an ad in the DMAW newsletters with a tombstone saying "Rest in peace, direct mail," and the tagline was, "We've heard the rumor, but we haven't seen the corpse," and that was 27 years ago or 26 years ago, and it's still going. And for example, our biggest year in direct mail for CCAH was in 2020. Mm-hmm. So I think a trend that people need to watch out for is dismissing a lot of the old technology and not realizing it still has, a major role in the future. I think it's going to change. All of us are about to get saturated with catalogs in our mailboxes because of the holidays. I mean, that's direct mail. And if it's not working, why are they just piling very expensive catalogs into our mailboxes? And that's because they still work. Now, the avenue for ordering has changed. Back in the day, you had an order form in there and then an 800 number. Today, they send you the catalog, you go online, you order. And I do think direct mail is going to go that way more and more, that people will be responding by digitally. But I don't think it's going to disappear anytime soon. So
I'm going to push back on the fax machine. I don't think fax machines are coming back.
I don't think fax machines are coming back. No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, but direct mail's still here.
Yeah. So one of the big things you've always done, and even as a principal at the firm, has been content. writing letters, fundraising messaging, fundraising strategy from the creative side of things. So can you talk a little bit about that, and how do you approach telling a story? What works and what doesn't work?
Yeah, and there's not one right way or one wrong way. There's definitely a science to this, but there's also a certain amount of art. So I love the fact that CCAH has a wide range of writers who have different styles, yet they all work. My style has been short and sweet. Basically, I think we're very, compared to when I started in this, we're very much in the age of sound bites and low attention capacity by the audience, and they've been accustomed to watching, TikToks and all this other stuff, and people want things in shorter sound bites. So my style has been to try to take a very complicated argument and be able to condense it into the tightest package possible. Sometimes it also revolves around personal stories. You get a lot of debate about, oh, should it be, do we need a personal story? Do we not? And it just really varies by the client. I did a lot of work for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, and that definitely revolved around personal stories. But then when you're writing for somebody, for example, for a group like AARP, when you're talking about Social Security and Medicare, the facts really matter. Talking about how long Social Security has before it's got to be, before it's not going to be fully funded, and the same for Medicare and things like that. So it can really vary, but I would say, my chief strategy has been the shorter, the sweeter.
That makes sense. Do you ever have writer's block?
Oh yeah, all the time.
How do you
What's funny, I don't really consider myself a writer. I consider myself an editor. So I just start writing, and a lot of it's gibberish. But then after an hour of writing, I go back and start fine tuning it and editing it, and then it starts taking shape as a letter. And occasionally having a bourbon helps. So
sure.
Yeah. I mean, some of my best letters I've had after a bourbon. So
that's good to know. I'll try that. I'll try that holiday trick.
As all the American writers have done over the centuries. So that's the old tried.
Tennessee Williams, yeah.
I remember I was having to write for Ralph Nader back when I worked at Public Citizen, and I was having difficulty writing this letter about campaign finance reform. And it seemed very complicated. And I was out, I met a friend for drinks at the old brick skiller. And I was sitting here trying to explain the subject to him. And, basically I just got frustrated and said, well, this is just legalized bribery. That's what it is. And then all of a sudden realized I just had the genesis of this letter and ran back and wrote it down. Years long control. So I want to say most of my letters are not written under the influence. So
right. And I don't want anybody to take that advice too hard during the workday either.
Exactly. This is Dr. Pepper, by the way.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for confirming that. So Jim, you're moving on from a career that's taken up 3 decades. So what is next for Jim Hussey?
Really, I'm trying to figure that out. I'm going to take a little bit of time off. I have some secondary ventures that I've been doing. I wanted to do more things creative. So 7 or 8 years ago, I got into producing documentaries. Documentary, I did one. They take a lot of time to put together, actually. And so I produced a documentary back beginning in 2014. It was released in 2017, and I really enjoyed the process. And so I also decided I wanted to direct my own documentary. And so I started that a few years later, and I actually just finished that, and it premiered last week at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. And so I'm going to spend a couple of months promoting that, going to film festivals, going to screenings. We signed a deal with a distribution company, Virgil Films, that handled Super Size Me and some of the other big ones. So we're hoping that'll end up on a streaming platform, but it's a very competitive field. But I've enjoyed putting it together. I'm going to enjoy showing it across the country. And I'm going to concentrate on that for a few months. But then I'm not walking away from direct marketing. I really want to stay in it. So I've got to figure out in what form to do that. I was on the client side before becoming a consultant, and part of me would potentially like to return to that at some point, possibly working part-time with an organization or something like that I really believe in, but also doing some other things.
So the documentary, what is the subject?
It's about the pop artist Roy Lichtenstein. If you're familiar with his work's based on comic art. Even people who don't know his name, as soon as they see his work, they recognize it. It's like the early 1960s, femme fatale in a comic book saying, "Oh, Brad," or something like that. And he did most of his best known work in the early 60s. And today, those paintings can be worth as much as $165 million a piece. Back then, he was selling them for $3,000 or $4,000, but today they've gone up. But what most people don't know is that he was appropriating these images from comic artists, from comic books, just the same way Andy Warhol took the Campbell soup can and put it into a painting. He was taking these panels out of comic books and putting them into fine art galleries. But unlike the Campbell soup can, the comic panels were created by people who also considered themselves artists, and they were not given credit, and they were not compensated for that. And they were very angry about it. Lichtenstein copied 30, 32, 35 artists back then. And most of those artists have passed away. That was, 60 years ago. But I spent the past 6 years tracking down the last surviving comic artists who were appropriated by Lichtenstein to get their side of the story. And, they're very angry about it. So that's what the film is about. It introduces Roy Lichtenstein, reviews his work, but also goes into the other side of the story about how these artists feel like that, they were stolen from. And we get into not only their feelings, but into the legalities and ethics of it. And while their copies of their work, as I said, could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, they've lived fairly austere lives. I mean, one of the people who we focused on, Russ Heath, lived in poverty. He had to rely on charity just to get his groceries. Yet there are copies of his paintings worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So we talk about, and he's never really gotten proper credit for that. And certainly no compensation.
That's so interesting because Roy Lichtenstein, I mean, very familiar, but also having seen his exhibits, it's sort of like he copied the ideas and the imagery, but he also recreated them with paint on canvas. So he didn't literally, so it sort of gets into that interesting question of idea versus the actual process of creation.
Well, exactly. And we get into that. This is, the film's not a slam piece on Lichtenstein, but what we're trying to do is fill a gap in the scholarship about Lichtenstein because his biographers have just neatly avoided this topic. They might spend a few sentences alluding to it and maybe show one of the comics just to give it lip service, but very little attention has been paid to that. And I began this project thinking that Roy Lichtenstein was a great artist, and I'm ending the project still thinking that Lichtenstein is a great artist. But the film does pose the question. A lot of the people participating in the film pose the question about whether did he take shortcuts? Should he have acknowledged these other artists? And so that's what we're addressing in the film.
That's fascinating. Well, this was a really good conversation, and I want to wrap up with a little game that we play at the end.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah, are you ready?
All right.
Have you ever played Two Truth and a Lie?
Oh,
the non-gutter edition. We keep it clean, like PG-13 at most. Have you played it before?
A long time ago.
So you tell me 3 things, and 2 of them are truthful that I may not know about you. Okay. And one of them is made up, and then I have to guess which one is a lie.
Boy, I wish I had some preparation for this. I'm so bad at this type of thing. Okay, 2 truths and a lie. Boy. Gosh. Oh man, I wish I had that time.
Did I put you on the spot?
No, it's okay. I mean, that's your prerogative. Let me think about this. Two truths and a lie. Okay. I should have this prepared because it's hit me before. Two truths and a lie. Okay. I've worked for 5 winning presidential campaigns.
Okay.
I am related to Daniel Boone. And I've played golf with Bill Clinton.
You're very tricky. So I don't know who Daniel Boone is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. You didn't. You went to school in your native country, right? So you did.
Well, no, I started middle school in U.S., but I don't know who Daniel Boone is.
Daniel Boone was more popular back in the 1950s and 60s. He was a frontiersman in Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was a frontiersman, had the, coonskin cap
Okay. So I'm going to say that the Bill Clinton golf is true because I believe he played golf and I can see that happening. I'm going to say presidential campaigns is true. And the Daniel Boone is a lie.
No, you got it wrong.
I got it wrong? Which one is the lie?
I've never played golf with Bill Clinton. I mean, I worked on his campaign, but it's not like he would even know me. And I don't play golf. So no, that one. Yeah, but I am related to Daniel Boone from his wife's side. And I count 5 presidential campaigns because only 3 of them made it to the White House, but all 5 won the popular vote. So in my mind, I worked on 5 winning campaigns.
That makes sense. Well, and it's Clinton's loss for not playing golf with you.
Well, no, I mean, I've played a little bit. I'm really, really horrible. And yeah.
Jim, thank you for joining me today. This was wonderful. Really enjoyed the conversation. I've known you for a long time, but I definitely learned a lot about you, including Daniel Boone, and I'm going to Google him right after.
Google him. And I just want to say it's been such a joy knowing you over the years. I mean, it was great working with you at the firm. It was then Adams Hussey, you said, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to keep up with who worked at what time and under what name. But it's been great to watch your career progress and how well you've done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good to see you and talk to you soon.